All right, thank you for joining me today, Tony. If you don't mind, will you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Tony Christon-Walker. I am the Director of Prevention and Community Partnerships for AIDS Alabama. I am also one of the co-founders of Birmingham Black Pride. I also produce two podcasts, Same Crap, Different Day, and Let Me Say This, which has focuses on current events, and we really talk a lot about race, gender, sexual health. I'm also a father, grandfather, uncle, mentor, and big brother to a lot of people in the community.
That's amazing. So, what are some of the projects that you're working on? Personal projects. I mean, because I know your work is very personal. During the pandemic, how are y'all operating?
So back in March, I think around March 16th, AIDS Alabama made the decision to really, really social distance to protect ourselves and our clients. We never shut down any of our services. We just kind of scaled back and let people work from home when they could. When we had to interface with clients, we made sure that we were protecting ourselves and them. I actually have a drop-in center called The Hub that's located on 6th Avenue South across from Iron City and next to Nelson Glass. And we started doing voluntary temperature checks when people came in. And we also were able to provide masks for people, both some of our clients and employees from the Birmingham Mask Group, which is an awesome group, especially right now. Those people are doing some amazing work. So right now, we're still doing testing, linkage to care. I started a PrEP clinic, which is a pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV. It's a once-a-day pill that people take to prevent HIV. So we're still doing all the things that we were doing before. We just kind of scaled back, mainly because of demand. With the epidemic, there were a lot of people afraid to go out, so we couldn't really. We didn't have the demand, but we were there. We tried to let people know that we were there. Other things I'm working on. I'm currently working with the state health department to see about us doing COVID-19 testing, whether antigen or antibody testing, to make sure that people know whether or not they've had it, or if they had it, how we can get into care. This is something we're just starting on, just because my thing is protecting the community. And when I say the community, I mean the entire community, but especially marginalized population.
Well, I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing in Birmingham and that you have done and you continue to do. I know that the community appreciates you, and thank you for being a part of this project.
Thank you.
So we're going to kind of move into the big section of this is the personal section. So I want to ask you, and kind of jumping off on that, like, what does community mean to you? And what are some of the things that you love about the Birmingham community in particular?
For me, community is like anything that you touch or touches you. A lot of times we want to define things in terms of relationships, but I think a lot of times people don't understand what a relationship is. A lot of people think that, I have to have a personal, close contact and even conversation with you in order to have a relationship. But even if there's a person who lives on your block who you never talk to, but you speak to them every day when you're walking down the street, you have a relationship with that person. So, like, even if you walk by one day, you don't speak, they don't even know you. But it kind of makes them feel kind of weird, like, why didn't he speak to me today? Because you developed that relationship. So for me, relationships are very important. And I think some relationships need to be defined, whereas others, don't have to be defined. I have a love-hate relationship with Birmingham. I think we could be so much better than what we are. So that frustrates me sometimes. And I'm very vocal about it, and I think sometimes I'm misunderstood by people because I tend to be like a big picture thinker. Details, I kind of get lost in details sometimes. So like I'm really looking at the big picture of a lot of things when I make comments or when I speak. But Birmingham is a decent city, but I just feel like that we could be so much better than where we are.
I agree. There's always room for progress, and I think
Right.
that, you know, the your friends and your loved ones and the people who respect you really appreciate you for your honesty and for
Um,
just telling it how it is, you know. I mean,
it's okay. It's okay until it turns on them, and then it's like, oh my God, Tony just said something that I didn't like, and I'm like, well, you asked.
I mean, I get that too, and sometimes I wonder if it's like growing up not white, you know, like growing up in a family of color, that like my mom was always very blunt, you know, and was always telling it how it is, but she wasn't wrong. So
Right.
I feel I feel like it's a good quality.
You know, I used to be a member of this church, and they had this motto, and it was called "Truthing in Love." Like truthing in love. Like I'm always honest with people, and even though they don't sometimes understand it, it always comes from a place of love. Like I'm not a person to go out and intentionally hurt someone. I think that's just rude, crude, and unattractive.
Yeah,
But I think there are sometimes people need to hear hard truths, and you don't have to be nasty with it when you say it, depending on the circumstances. But you know, you have to be honest with people about the way that you feel, and hopefully, even if you don't agree with someone, you can agree to disagree.
exactly. Well, you know, it should always come from a place of love. You
Always.
know, always from a place of love and care, you know, and sometimes it's because you care and feel so much, you know, that you just have to tell it how it is. So what does pride mean to you? And I know that that can be a very loaded loaded question, but bear with me.
Okay. So for me, in order to understand what pride means to me, you have to know who I am. So I'm a 53-year-old man, uh, born in the late 60s, you know, raised in the 70s and 80s. I was born in a very poor black community to the west of here called Dolomite, and I was bussed into a upper middle class white city called Pleasant Grove. The presence of racism was always there. So even when I look at the LGBTQ movement, even though you know Stonewall was started by trans women of color, you know it's always been very white leaning. So I really didn't really identify with that because I didn't see me in that. Fast forward to when I met my husband in 2008, my first gay pride was in 2009. And I understood the movement. I understood why the visibility was necessary. But I've been like out and open about my sexuality since I was about 21. And I've never felt the need to like lead with that. You know, I lead with the fact that I'm a person first. I'm a person who happens to be male, who happens to be black, who happens to be gay. And for me, leading with anything other than my humanity kind of like compromises that. So you know, I understand. Like there are a lot of movements: the gay movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, I understand the need for all those, but I'm a person first, and I always lead with my personhood instead of my identity. And that pisses some people off sometimes, but you know that's just me and how I identify. So to answer your question, um, up until recently, pride has not meant a lot to me because I never saw myself in it. Even with us creating Birmingham Black Pride, identify with this stuff. You know, we support you. You know, do what you need to do, but it doesn't represent who I am or what's important to me. Which is why you know we created Birmingham Black Pride. You know, I love the fact that June is Pride Month, and I love the fact that so many of my marginalized sisters and brothers, regardless of race or ethnicity, you know, can find a place to be themselves. But for me, I've never really identified wholly with you know pride as a thing.
So could you tell me a little bit about Black Pride and how it was started in Birmingham and what kind of events y'all are doing this month and for the future?
Sure. So Birmingham Black Pride actually is in August. We purposely moved in August to be closer to the death date of Bayard Rustin, who was a black gay activist in the '60s who worked closely with Dr. King. We wanted to have it on his birthday, but it was in March and it was just a little too cold. We were formed 3 years ago, and the main reason we formed kind of goes back to the reason for my disassociation with pride, because even in the stuff that we do in Birmingham during June, I never saw myself. We had actually tried to do events in conjunction, and those just never seemed to work out. So instead of complaining about it, we just decided to create our own event. Our first year, we had Anthony Williams, who was a contestant on um, um, the clothing show. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Oh, Project
Um,
Runway.
Project Runway,
Yes.
yeah. And ironically, Anthony used to work for me when I managed the Gap back in the '90s when he was in high school. And then last year we had Dominique Jackson propose, and this year we actually have Isis King from America's Next Top Model. But we're gonna have to move the events to virtual. I think I don't know. Hopefully coronavirus will die, but I doubt it. Um, but yeah, so like our events are really focused on the Black LGBTQ experience. In the past 3 years, well, last 2 years, I was focusing on highlighting the trans experience, which is why I had Isis and Dominique, which when you think about levels of marginalization, trans women, they get the brunt of just about everything. So I kind of wanted to lift them up in that, but also just speak to the issues that aren't really talked about broadly during the Pride Month that we've always had. So like in the Black community, HIV is a huge issue. I'm HIV positive. I've been living with HIV for a number of years. So like being able to have a forum to discuss that, discuss things like PrEP, and just how are you doing as a Black person in the South? So like we don't do any parades or marches, but we have a banquet in which we honor people who have been doing work in the community over the years. We have an educational summit. Last year we added a comedy show and a spoken word event, along with our Pride parties on Saturday, which we have a day party and an evening party, and then like a big picnic on Sunday. This year, we're still trying to, because it's a moving target. Like we don't know what this year is going to look like.
Yeah.
But we are determined to do something. This month, though, we are going to do two virtual concerts. One featuring Dominique Posey, who's from Birmingham, who was on American Idol, and a drag show. So we're going to do 3 events, 2 concerts, and a drag show during the month of June virtually.
That's amazing. Please keep me posted on that. I remember now that Dominique from Pose was at Black Pride last year, and I was very sad I couldn't go because I was actually in New York for a family wedding. And so I was trying to get my friends to go, and I was like, please go and take a photo with her. All right. So
she was awesome. She was awesome.
She's amazing. Like her character on Pose is like everything, like just everything. So reading is fundamental. Do you agree? And what do you think about that statement? And tying into it, how do you think libraries can be of assistance to the Black queer community and continue to be?
Reading is fundamental. I think that was coined back in the 70s or late 60s. I remember Riff as a young child. I read when I can, but I think that the importance of reading to our community, again, is having books in which we show up. My son goes to Red Mountain Community School, which is a couple blocks over from the library. I'm pretty sure they're in here a lot. But they did this thing where they decolonized their bookshelves. So like instead of having these stories of the agrarian South in which everything was lovely and there were Southern belles and Southern gentlemen, like just tell the truth. Black people were enslaved. It was not a cute scene. But then also making sure that books are available for people to identify with, like books like Elan Harris. You got people like Audre Lorde. Black icons, in the movement and just in our history who have gone, unheard of. One of the things that a Queer History Month, and what people miss in that is that there are so many queer Black people who were left out of history, or we just don't really know who they were for real. People like, Bessie Smith, even Bayard Rustin. Like, Bayard Rustin was so instrumental in the civil rights movement, but I was like 40 something when I heard about him. So like there's like a culture erasure that takes place. So making sure that people have books that they can relate to, that reflect them, that they can see themselves in, is very important if you're going to talk about reading for people, because no one wants to read anything that they can identify with. I actually, during the coronavirus, wrote my first book. I'm in the editing stages now. Um, it's going to be a part of a trilogy of books that I'm writing, which are loosely based on, not very loosely, but based on my life. In my experience as a young Black boy in the 80s who's gay, who has a child. It's a big mess. But yeah, I think that's very important.
That is amazing, and I will buy a copy. I'm so glad you're writing a book. Um, that's a great segue into my next question, which is, are there any books or authors or films that have been highly influential to your life?
Oh God, yeah. um, the first one I think about when I think about books is The Invisible Life by Elan Harris. And it was so resonant for me because, being gay and being able to pass in quote unquote the normal world is a privilege that so many people don't get. And cisgender, straight identifying queer people need to realize that we have a gift and that we should use it, kind of like I want white people to use white privilege. I don't want you to give it up, but I want you to use it for good. So being able to defend and take care of people who are less fortunate than you is very important. So like, yeah, The Invisible Life was really, really important for me. When I think about films recently, Moonlight. Um,
Great film.
Moonlight, yeah, it was touching on so many things that I identify with. I'm almost about to tear up now. I'm a crier. But that was very, very, very near and dear to my heart, and really spoke to me. And there are other movies that have done that as well. The Color Purple is one of my favorite movies and books. I could read it all day. And even when it comes to not even books that are not based on Black people for real or Black queer people, but The Handmaid's Tale and then the follow-up, The Testament. Oh my God, it has such implications to where we are now as a nation.
Yes.
It is like the author said that when she wrote it in 1985, she was like, this will never happen. And then last year, she's like, oh crap, we're here.
Okay, so the last two questions are the real heart jerkers, pulling the strings. But if you could give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Um, hmm, um, if I could give my younger self advice, it would be that you're enough, and you're fine just the way you are. And that actually plays into things that I struggle with, even with being a part of this project and being highlighted. I wouldn't call it triggering because triggering has a negative connotation. But I am short. I'm still short. I wasn't that cute as a kid, and I was smarter than the average bear. And when you're in a poor community, education isn't really valued. For I got criticized for in my community. So in the way that plays into this, I don't like my name being highlighted for real, because when that happened when I was a kid, I was punished for it by my peers. Oh, that's Tony Walker. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else. He thinks he's this, he thinks he's that. So I kind of shy away from being in the spotlight, although I do a whole lot of stuff, even with my Facebook presence. but it's not like I'm doing it because I want to be seen. I'm doing it because there's some things I need to say. So, so yeah, I would tell myself that you're enough and that you're gonna do great things because I had no idea that this would be my life.
Yeah. And tying into that, in what ways would your younger self be proud of who you are today?
I don't think I
I
read
love that
this
question.
yet.
It's so sweet.
I think that, oh my God. Okay, so another thing about me, I am the intentional and sometimes unintentional mentor of a lot of kids. Um, I raised two boys, and I kind of raised my first cousin who's the same age as my son. And I realized that my adult life, I have been taking care of young boys in particular, and some girls who didn't have a father figure. So my grandparents raised me, and if I had met myself when I was a kid, I would have taken care of me. So my, oh my God, my younger self would 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 love me because I took care of them. Um, my husband and I adopted my nephew who was in foster care in Georgia. We became his guardians, and then we actually full on adopted him. I have my husband's first cousin was kind of like our first child together, and we have taken care and nurtured them. My grandchildren did end up having to mentor a young guy, and he actually ended up moving here, graduated from our college. There's another young man who we went to church with who we have just nurtured, and my younger self will be proud of me for taking care of him.
Well, is there any? Oh, I'm so happy that you have agreed to be a part of this project, and I thank you for your time um, and just thank you for being in the community. And I'm so glad that we have met in this way. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Like anything you would like to say for anybody who's listening?
Yeah, actually two things. One, to kids like me, seek out people who will support you. Find me. If you're a young, gay, queer, um, black kids in particular, kids in general, find me, seek me out. I am there for you. It's just what I've done. For parents, if you are the parent of a queer kid, black in particular, just a parent in general, if you need some help or instruction on how to deal with your child, how to support them, how to love them, reach out to me. I'm available. I hope you have my contact information on here. I mean, even down to my personal cell phone number. I don't care. But so many people struggle with their religion and the identity of their kids, and so many kids are hurt because they feel like their parents don't love them. And I think that sometimes it's not that they don't love them; they just don't understand how to love them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, I'm open to be a resource. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I'll never get tired of it.
Well, I thank you for your time, and thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.